without further ado, I would like to introduce a woman who needs no introduction, Bonnie Rosenthal, who's going to talk to us about her experiences in SOS in the last 35 years of SOS, which I understand do not overlap completely. Almost, but not completely. So see if you can find Bonnie. This could be like a drinking game. If you see Bonnie in one of the slides, you can't take a drink because you don't have any alcohol, but you know what I'm saying. Look for her because I told her to put herself in the slides. Go ahead, Bonnie, it's yours.
All right, thank you, Don. And I will answer, I just looked at our budget. You'll see the line for the sculpture was $15,000, over $15,000 to restore Hiawatha and its pedestal. So, well, it's so great to see so many people I know over the years. But 35 years ago, once upon a time, 35 years ago, when my husband and I moved nearby, we were driving around to find out about the neighborhood, and we came around the corner across the Beltway and saw the Japanese pagoda. And we both said, "What is this place?" And I'm sure a lot of people in this room said the same thing when they saw the pagoda. It's not the usual architecture for this area. I can't condense 35 years of experience in this evening, but what I'm going to do is give you highlights of my experience kind of from the inside of Save Our Seminary. If you would like to see the whole history of SOS and what we did, decade by decade, our website has a wonderful program from our 30th anniversary that gives you a real great timeline with photos and things. So I'm going to talk about a lot of that, but it'll be in highlights. I'll figure out how this works. Okay. This is how really SOS started, with guided tours. And I'm just curious, how many of you here have taken an SOS tour? A lot of you. If you haven't, you have to take a tour. This is one of the most unique historic places in all of the state of Maryland, and probably even in the country, with this collection of architecture. So please do take a tour, and that's how I got hooked. I saw an ad in the paper that they were giving a tour of this place, and my husband and I had seen the site already, driven by, so I knew I wanted to see what was in this place. And there were two people that were co-founders of Save Our Seminary, and the man, if you can see him right there, that is Richard Schaefer. He is one of the co-founders of Save Our Seminary. He moved out of state, so but he still works in DC, so we do hear from him occasionally. But that was the first thing he felt that, get the word out, tell people about this place. And you can see, I think it's really wonderful to see, this is what it looked like. Things were growing out of the gutters. That's how bad this site was. As you can see, practically trees growing. So that's how I got hooked. I hope you'll do the same. What happened was I joined SOS in 1989, the year they became officially listed as an organization. They were still finalizing their bylaws when I went to the first meeting of the group. And very quickly, I ended up being on the board. I don't know how that happened, but I edited the newsletter. By 1990, 1 year later, I was the president of Save Our Seminary. And that happened because the president moved away out of state, and I was vice president at the time, so guess what happened? But the main thing I did during that period was to increase the public awareness and support for efforts to save the seminary. Showing the deterioration of the site was the best, pictures are worth 1,000 words. So through tours, I learned from Rich how to give tours, and I gave slide talks to groups, went out and talked to them, and also press coverage. This was a time when we raised the the awareness of the press and said, look what's happening. You know, at the time, Army still owned this property, but they weren't taking care of it. So we told the press about that. So, but as you can see, here's this is the dining room, which is now the community room, and this was a bucket that was catching the water that was dripping down from the ceiling. The floor was collapsing under the weight of the water bucket. This is the chapel. As you can see, there are no stairs, but there were once upon a time. There's a huge crack here. There's a tree growing right in front of it. And this waterfall, frozen waterfall, was in senior house. When the pipes broke and the heat was turned off, that's what happened. So it was easy to sell deterioration for this site. Just need some pictures. But the saddest day of the seminary was the arson fire of the Odeon, which was the theater for the school. And some of you probably parked on, if you parked on the parking deck. That parking deck is where the Odeon used to be. SOS offered a $1,000 reward for any information leading to the arson. I ended up going on Channel 9 TV to raise the awareness about the fire, the arson. This was in 1993, the September of 93. In the spring of 1994, we sued, SOS and the National Trust for Historic Preservation sued the U.S. Army for their neglect of this site. And the fire was kind of the last resort. I always say we lost the battle, but we won the war. We lost the lawsuit because the judge decided that the Army was doing the best they could as far as maintaining the site. And the preservation law could not be any stronger to compel them to do any more. But as a result of that, the Army declared this site access to their needs. Most of the buildings were empty at that time anyway, and so the access process is a long federal process for disposing of property. It actually took the Army 10 years from the day they decided to access to it actually making it happen. Meanwhile, through that whole process, there's a very sad process. Save Our Seminary, well, let me back up a little. I was employed part-time at the National Trust at that time, so I had good connections. So I talked to them about this and the fire, and they agreed to be the co-plaintiff with us in the lawsuit because they felt we had a strong case. It also, on the other side, because we had to work out settlement discussions, we brought all the potential interested parties to discuss the future of this site. And that included our U.S. Senator, the staff of the Maryland Historical Trust, which is the state preservation office, and the county staff. We also had the county executive at the time, the National Trust, of course, and then the Army people. They had their own division of, preservation and the command and whatever, and SOS. And we all literally sat around a table and talked about the possibilities for this site. And one of the things that the Army had to do was determine, future uses. So they did a study to determine possible future uses for the site. And that took years, like I said, 10 years for that process. Meanwhile, SOS is still doing tours. And there's me, there's a picture of me. Oh, you're supposed to find me, right? It's from Don. That's me. And then we did ballroom dances for fundraising. The Army, we kind of had a love-hate relationship with the Army. Here we sued them, okay? But then we also said, can we use the ballroom? So they allowed us to use the ballroom, and it looks a little bit different than it does today. This is the youngest of the buildings of the seminary. It was built in 1927, the ballroom. But at that time, we had 1970s drapes kind of hanging from the windows around here. There was an old stage that the Army built right here where the screen is. Just dirt and old furniture, what era, 1950s furniture, chairs and that kind of thing. The Army just kind of walked off the site and left whatever was here, furniture and all kinds of things. But meanwhile, we had several dances, and Steve, our videographer, right there in the center, was kind of the lead of those because he's a fabulous swing dancer. So, but that helped us raise a lot of awareness. People wanted to come and see this ballroom, even if the drapes were falling off the windows. And the site alone sells itself. So we started, let me go back a second. We started the tours regular monthly tours in 1994, which was 20 years ago. So we have guided a lot of people since then. 30, thank you, 30 years ago. Yeah, I'm not good at math. We also, 30 years, really? We also gave private group tours, and this, like as I said before, special talks. We had special events. I'll never forget this one event. It was called the International whatever night in the ballroom, because there's so many of the sorority houses are all different international styles. So we decided it would be fun to have, we had a Japanese dance. We had a belly dancer too, I think. I don't know what country that went with, but we had several other things that related to the different international styles. But this was in October, maybe November, and there was heat here in the ballroom. It was a lovely day for November, but the weather changed quite rapidly, and it actually ended up snowing. Well, and the heat stopped in this room, and you couldn't get all the windows closed, so the snow is blowing through the windows. There's no heat. After we presented these different events of people, we had dancing, and people didn't care because they danced and they got warm that way, but I don't know if you remember that, Steve. That was an adventure. But that was fun. Let me see. This is where, oh, yes. A lot of what I did in the 90s was communicate with the Army. Many letters, phone calls, faxes in those days, emails I even did, to the Army, mostly about security breaches, water and steam leaks, because we kind of patrolled the area and the property and let them know that there was a problem in this building or there was a leak in this building. But meanwhile, we also did what we could do by boarding up some windows. Steve was one of the ones who we tried to board up a basement window. On Halloween night, oh, that brought kids out. We got to see this spooky place, So we would do patrols, about three, Steve and another friend of ours and I would come over to the site, and we'd patrol the site and keep kids away. I found kids one day skateboarding in the ballroom. I could hear them, and came in and yelled at them. But I did a lot of yelling in those days. But I'm sure the Army was thinking, oh God, here she comes again. With this now, what's wrong, But one thing I particularly like, in a way, odd sort of way, is you can see this lamp that is hanging barely off the front of the gymnasium. As you can see, it's pulling away the stucco, the weight and the water damage from here, a roof leak, is pulling the stucco away from the building. Well, Rich Schaefer, the co-founder of SOS, Rich lived very nearby in the neighborhood here. And one night, we were concerned that this cast iron lamp would fall and be broken, and we wanted to save it or salvage it. So he brought his truck over, and he and I carried that cast iron lamp to his truck, and he was going to put it in his house or something out of the way, in a secure place. And the next day, I got a contact from the Army maintenance guy and said, someone saw you last night loading up this Army property and taking it away, and if you don't return it, we can arrest you. And I was tempted. I was really tempted to say, no, you can't have it. But I said, I will return it if you guarantee that you put that in storage and then take the other one down and secure that as well, because that'll eventually fall off, so that it can be restored someday. And they agreed to that, and we returned it to them reluctantly. But I was very glad when I heard that they still had it when the property was actually transferred. So, one good thing the Army did.
Are those ones that are on the building now?
Yes, they have been restored, and they are back on the gymnasium building, quite secure. Yes. So one big project that SOS did in 1999 was we raised funds to paint the pagoda. Well, we actually restored the exterior of it. The Army, our thought was that we wanted to show what could be done with one building that we thought we could handle ourselves. That the Army, and then this would be an example of what could be done with the rest of the site. So we got, the Army did do the encapsulation of the lead paint, the white covering. But then we raised $40,000 of cash, and then we also got donations of paint. We hired roofers to replace the inappropriate roof covering. We fixed windows, almost all volunteer labor. We did not do painting on the upper level. We did have to hire a painter to go up on the second and third floor, or the third floor, I guess. We did the first and second floors, but here we have a team of people, and she's got her SOS t-shirt on, I think. But we had to, we actually don't tell the Army, we stripped off the encapsulation and found that, the original red color of those pillars. But we had done a historic paint analysis, so we knew what the original colors of the pagoda were, and so we did those colors matching when we repainted. And I see the pagoda needs another paint job now, but some of it's peeling. But that was 1999, a few years, how many years ago that was. All right. So another thing we did was salvage historic features. And these two iron pieces that are now hanging in the main lobby just down the hall of the apartment building here are the original trim of the gate that was the entrance gate to the property from the train station. And Steve actually stored them in your house for several years till we had a place to put them. So we just hung them up last year. And down below is our bird's eye view poster of the campus that was done by the school originally. But that shows the picture of the gate, so you can see the connection between it. And then once somebody told me, maybe it was Rich, that these cast iron lamps were over on the Army property, that is still Army property off of Linden Lane. And he said they're just sitting there, but they belong at the seminary. And I said, oh, okay. So I arranged to get them moved over here to the seminary and put them in storage until we could use them, or put them in place. Well, these are the lamps that Anne was talking about that we're going to be working on. One is in place by the Japanese bungalow right outside of here, and the other one is on Linden Lane, and the one on Linden Lane is the one we'll be restoring, hopefully, when we get enough funds. And this is another story that I was involved in. This is a ballroom picture, but this in the center is one of the chandeliers, the very highest chandeliers that are hanging up above here. And we found that on the floor near the door, about when you came in here, it had crashed to the floor, not because it had fallen off, but because a couple of people were trying to steal it. They had somehow gotten into the attic, which if you turn around and look, I don't know if this won't reach that far, you'll see at the very top below the glass windows are those 3 brick arches. That is the attic to the ballroom. They got up there, and with ropes, they somehow lassoed the chandelier and tried to pull it through, or somehow disconnected it, but it fell. That was one. That's the 2 end chandeliers down there. The other chandelier was gone. But we found it down in the music hall, still intact. And so, thank goodness, we were able to salvage that one. But what I did was I spent hours, days, reassembling that broken chandelier. Almost all the crystals were missing, but I was able to get new crystals, and there were a few that could be salvaged, and put it all together. I hung it from the basement of the pagoda on a pipe or something, and then would go periodically and restore the chandelier. So that's my chandelier up there. So that's the chandelier story. Oops. Probably one of the most important things SOS did was to develop basic guidelines or priorities for the redevelopment as the property was reaching that point. And we came up with 4 main things we wanted to see in any redevelopment here. One was maximum amount of preservation. We wanted everything to save. The buildings that were here were all salvageable. The next one was public access. We did not want the property to be shut off, like if it was become a private residential community and then it had fenced or something and then we couldn't come onto it. But we wanted some amount of public access. And we wanted a sustainable use, a use that would last for years. And we thought actually residential was probably the best use that would make most sense and be the least amount of impact. And we also wanted the least impact on the neighborhood. We have a residential neighborhood very nearby, and a couple residents are here this evening of that neighborhood. And so we worked with the community, the neighborhoods. We worked with everyone, especially the county. And the county included these 4 priorities in their request for proposals when they took over the process that the Army was going of accessing, and they established these 4 priorities right up front. So any developer responding to the request for proposal had to meet these 4 criteria. And I think that is really what led to a successful preservation of this property, in my own estimation. What happened was the Alexander Company out of Madison, Wisconsin was selected as the developer. And this was in 2004, 2003, 2004. And at that time, SOS felt, wow, we've done our major work. Now it's in the hands of the developer. So my role with SOS was a little bit lessened. But as it turned out, Alexander Company hired me as their on-site manager because I knew the most about the property, and they were in Madison, and the property was here, and so was I. So on the day of transfer of the property, there was a big ceremony. We had senators and county people and everybody in the Army. The Army, at the end of the ceremony, the Army handed a key ring about as big as a coffee can, full of keys. I mean, full of keys. And then Alexander, after the ceremony, handed it to me and said, "Here you go. You're the on-site manager, so can you keep the buildings secure while we're working on the plan?" And so I did. That was the key to all the doors of every building here, and there were 24 buildings on this property at the time. So what I did for probably 5 or 6 years with Alexander Company was I did a lot of things. Besides the key opening, I had to secure, first of all, empty the buildings, because like I said, the Army walked away and left furniture, and they used the Aloha House as a child care center, so it was still filled with unused toys and games, and I ended up finding someone to donate all that to, and then I had to, secure the buildings if they weren't already secured. I had to make sure that all the water was turned off in all the buildings. I had to have a termite inspection of all the buildings and treatment if needed. And one thing that I found unusual, but it's something they needed to have done, the Alexander Company, I had to count every plumbing fixture in all of the buildings from top to bottom. And that meant sinks, toilets, whatever, that had a plumbing connection. And I think that's where I got arthritis in my wrist, because I'm writing on the drawing where it was. For days, months probably took me to do that. But that's why I have this picture of the sinks. This is an original seminary era double bowl sink that was in one of the dormitory rooms. And I tried to get the Alexander Company to keep that because I thought it was so charming, but they didn't think that would fit in with the modern renovation of the buildings on the inside. Then I had to find a salvage person to take those away, and I think I got somebody from New York to come down and take all these sinks down, which I was sad to see go. But that's the way it was. There's me. There, see, I do have a picture. That's me. That's what I usually wore, a hard hat during my Alexander years, because you never knew when the ceiling would fall in or fall down on you. In fact, I did in Colonial House. I was walking up on the second floor where they had bedrooms, and I walked into one bedroom and put my leg right through the floor. Thank goodness I was not alone. So who was with me pulled me out of the hole. And the whole floor turned out to be rotten, and so I didn't get very far. But at least I wasn't alone and got out of there. They have a new floor now. What else we did, and we still do, and that is another important thing we did, was communicate the site history. That's what tells people about what this place is. We designed and got a grant to create this fold-up photo display that told the history through pictures, and we had showed it at events. We did 2 editions of our history book. The first one was 1999. This is the cover of our second edition, which was done in 2014. And then this is one of the 9 trail markers that is on site. And the Alexander Company, one of the requirements the county gave, because the property is contiguous with parkland, county parkland, the county wanted a trail for people on the parkland to be able to come onto the site and take a tour of this historic property. So they had to develop a tour. So they came to SOS, Alexander did, and we gave them all of the photographs and the text, the historic, what you see at that point where the markers are. And here's each one has a map of where you are, and it shows a loop throughout the property that gives you a good kind of overview, not much detail, but it gives you a good overview of the site. So it's a great self-guided tour. And I often, if people can't come to our regular tours, I say, well, at least go and do the self-guided tour. Better than nothing. Or buy our book. Another important thing, as Ann was talking about, was restoring the sculpture. Any sculpture you see on the property is the result of the work of SOS. We either cleaned it or had it, raised the money from donations to restore the pieces. And here I am again. And there's Frank, our great tour guide. And we are cleaning the Statue of Hope in the center here, which is now placed in a little park between some townhouses here on the property. But the first statue we did was Joan of Arc. And this is what Joan looked like. She had that yellow cast also. And this is her finished. Beautiful. She is the only statue on the site that is bronze. And it is signed by the foundry and the original sculptor. So it's a very valuable piece. In fact, one day back in the 90s, Rich Schaefer happened to be walking around, and he found a couple of guys trying to load her on a truck to take her away. In other words, stealing it. And he stopped them. Thank goodness he was there. And so as a result of that, the Army did put Joan of Arc in storage until when the property was actually transferred to Alexander Company. All of the statues, everything that the Army had stored away came with the property. And part of my job with Alexander was to store them, get them moved from the Army and get them stored here on the site until they were ready to be placed. So. The Glen restoration is a big project of ours now. It's the biggest piece that's left in the puzzle, besides a couple of other buildings that still need to be done. But we started landscape cleanups. You see these couple guys working here at the Statue of Justice, which is over closer to the castle and villa. We started the tours in 1993, cleanups, I should say. In 1993, we did that till 2004. And starting 2021, we now give special guided tours of the Glen. And through the great work of both residents and Save Our Seminary volunteers, you can see, it's maybe hard to see in this picture, but there are paths that have been revealed that haven't been opened in years. They were just covered with soil, inches and inches of soil. So little by little, as Jean was explaining from the Glen Restoration Committee, is to open that up and get people to love that. It is a special magical place down in the Glen. So if you haven't been down there, please think about coming to one of our tours. Because there's things in there you'll never expect to see. Over the years, we have garnered some awards and recognitions. We got an award for our book. This is the first edition of our book, and this is an award. We got an award for the pagoda restoration from Maryland, I think, the county, I'm sorry. And we also got a very special award, the Montgomery Prize from Montgomery Preservation Inc. back in 2011 for I don't know, 23 years of preservation, and that the silver plate is engraved. And these items are hanging on the wall in our little museum room. One of the things the Alexander Company did for us, kind of partnering with them in a way, they gave us space here in the ballroom on the highest balcony, and now we've overflowed to the second lower balcony for our archives. So we house our archives in the whole balcony is full of cabinets and full of archives items. And they also gave us the space, one of the original parlors off of the main lobby in the apartment building for a little museum room or office. So we use it more as a museum room now, but those spaces Alexander couldn't use for anything else, so we got them. But we're very, very grateful to them for that. Does anybody recognize that guy? Yes. Yeah, Jamie Raskin. He presented this certificate. It was the Wayne Goldstein Award we got several years ago now. But he brought a citation from the state, or from the, yeah, I think he brought it from Maryland. Yeah, so. But this, it takes a team. It wasn't obviously just me. This is the board members from our 30th anniversary. This was our Roaring 20s event, which was great fun. But it's not just the board, it's members. It's people like you as members that have made us survive, grow and survive and be able to do these things. So, like I said, it takes a village, as they say. And guess what? We're still saving the seminary. There's still things to do. We need to clean and restore statues. We need to monitor buildings that aren't done yet, because there's 5 buildings still in process, more or less. We still have the Glen to restore. We have many archival items that need to be managed and saved and cataloged. So if you can help, we'd love to have you as a member. If you're not, or donate to our projects, either money or your physical abilities. Our website's full of all kinds of information. We have all of our past programs like this have been videotaped by Steve. Thank you, Steve. And they are posted there. And like I said, the 30th anniversary program gives a great overview of the whole history of SOS, if you're more detailed. And you can always email us too. We're very good at responding. That's one of my jobs as a board member. I'm still answering emails. So thank you all for being here.
Let me come over here. Folks may have questions for Bonnie, but I want to get this while Steve is still recording. So, you didn't think we were going to let you just leave. She's small, but she's mighty. All the things that you saw over the last 35 years are in large part because of Bonnie's hard work and dedication to this site, her devotion to this site. Look around you. We're here because of Bonnie. If you live on campus, you have a home because of Bonnie. Yes, thank you. So we have we have 3 things that we wanted to celebrate Bonnie with, and of course, we're not letting her go entirely. You know, you're on the board, so you're not off the hook. But to celebrate your retirement from your position as our executive director. We have decided that the board will be naming our archives the Bonnie J. Rosenthal Historical Collection and Archive. So, so that is the new name of our archives. Secondly, the board will all be contributing to the sculpture fund in your name, a minimum of $1,000. So that will go on our sculpture plaque of donations that will be done in your honor. And finally, little thingy down here. I will let you open it, but I do need to tell everybody what it is. This is a yearbook from the school, from National Park Seminary or National Park College, when it was still active, that we acquired off of eBay. And all of the board members have signed it, because that's what you do with yearbooks. And if we haven't quite all signed it yet, we will tonight. So we wanted you to have that as a memento from your board. So thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
And I would say, we were going to give Bonnie the presents before her talk, but I'm like, she might get a little flustered.
Thank you. And I'm supposed to not cry because Carol Blumlein said I can't cry. Okay, so I won't. Actually, I'm just really happy to have had this experience, and I look forward to continuing it and working with such great people, both members and the board. It's just been an experience of a lifetime. And I also want to recognize and say thank you. This I might cry. Is my husband, who's the man in the pink shirt there standing. He has been my right hand and left hand, sometimes literally, to be a sounding board, to be a supporter, to be a helper, hands-on. In the middle of the night when Steve and I would, I didn't tell you the story about, sorry. The stories keep coming. When we, Steve lives across the street from the pagoda, so he lives really close. And he found out that a baby monitor placed here in the ballroom area, I think that's where you had it, nearby in the hall. Three of them. We had them spread around the outs. 3 baby monitors would reach far enough to his house that he could hear things that were going on in the middle of the night. And so he would call me and say at 4 o'clock in the morning, Bonnie, there's somebody in the ballroom. And this is when I worked for Alexander Company, because I had to just keep the building secure. So I got up and got dressed, and my husband often came along with me in the middle of the night. And we came over and we chased away whoever was here. Sometimes we caught them and took them to court, actually, because Alexander wanted to, what do you call it? Process them or whatever. So, and they're all kids, I just came to, but yeah, in the middle of the night. So anyway, that, was that my story? Okay. Yeah, so anyway, thank you, sweetheart. And if anybody wants to see
We have to open the box, Bonnie, because we wanted everyone to see it was in the eBay box, so it didn't come from our archives.
Okay, I was going to say, you didn't take it out of our archives to give it to me. Okay, good. Okay, very good. Oh.
We do have a thank you Bonnie cake and a birthday cake, if anyone wants to have cake, because I like cake.
Yeah. So he got.
His wife doesn't appreciate it, but I like cake, and Bonnie likes cake, so we got plenty of cake.
Yes, so please eat cake, as Marie Antoinette or somebody said. Let them eat cake. All right, so thank you all again, and I hope you come again.
Does anyone have any questions for Bonnie?
Oh, questions, any questions? No questions, okay, I've talked enough. Oh, yes, Mark.
The female figures, the statues,
The
new here, so I don't know.
on the porch, the whole row of them?
Caryatids?
Caryatids, yes, which means a female figure that's used as a porch support, essentially, or a column.
I used to live in this area about 25 years ago, and I remember going through the park and seeing in the backyard somebody had a pergola. Are they the same?
Yes, those are the same. You will see if you go along the trail along Beach Drive there. There are 4 of those. And those 4 originally did come from the site. They went across the street. Well, the caryatids you see at Aloha House today were extended and connected to the gym as a covered walkway. And then they also went from the gym across Linden Lane to another building, one of the buildings that was lost for termites back in the 1960s. And what happened was the Army apparently, when that building came down, they either auctioned off or anybody could come and buy those statues. So the owner of that house, which I think is a descendant now, took 4 of them and built a pergola. They take very good care of them. So, but they are original. Yeah.
And just one more follow-up. The status of the 2 structures, the castle and the villa.
Yes. Okay. Question about the castle and the villa on the other side of the glen. As you see, there's not a lot of work there, but it is owned by a private owner. He is going to develop that as residential use. The castle will be a single-family home. The villa will be condominiums, and there'll be an extension put on to the villa that was originally there, but was so damaged that it had to be taken down. So he's going to rebuild it in kind, essentially. And then he will also build 8 new townhomes on the property where there's that little parking lot just before you get to the villa. But he is working right now with the county on a site plan because he owns a part of the Glen as well on some of the garden area over there. So he's got to present all these plans and approvals. He's also worked with the Maryland Historical Trust. Every building here, every historic building here has to go through the Maryland Historic Trust to be approved for any changes, which is what the Alexander Company did. So, yes?
There used to be a men's shelter here in the Carroll House.
Yes. Yes, there used to be a men's shelter in the Carroll House, and that's how it got its name. Carroll House used to be in the Stables building, which is at the far end of Linden, just before the curve. One of the things the county required of any developer of this site was to have the Carroll House remain on the site. It did not have to be in that building, the stables. Originally, it could be anywhere else on the site. Alexander chose to move them to the ground floor level of underneath the original dining room of the main building. So Alexander, and this was done through Montgomery County government, so that space is leased by Alexander to the county, who then leases it to Catholic Charities. There were 20 or 20-some men that lived there for years. It started in 1986, and there had never been any problems with it. But then the Carroll House decided to no longer house people here, and so they ended that. But then they brought in, there's now office space there for providers of housing assistance to the homeless, and job-related things, and they try to find jobs and homes and so on. So that's what's there. There's only a few people there in the office space, though. Yeah, and there was another question back there.
Do you know what they're going to do with the house on Woodstock around the circle that I believe was the girls'?
Oh, okay, yes. In the neighborhood of Forest Glen Park, which is the residential neighborhood here, you'll see at the, a 3-way intersection, 4-way? The 5-way, okay, keeps growing, is a big, beautiful historic house, and it's called Braemar. Braemar was the home economics house for the school. The girls used to go there for a week at a time and learn how to run a house. You know, cook and clean, or tell their servants how to do it. Because these were wealthy women who went here. So that house, the owner of that house, well, what the history of it, it was when the Army took the property, by that time the neighborhood had been developed and the house was kind of absorbed into the neighborhood. So the Army sold Braemar. The owner family, the couple, and their son lived there for many years. I don't know, I think they might have been the original owners from the Army. The son passed away last year. So, and we don't know, but the house may be in a trust. Apparently there are some family members, a daughter and a son, but we don't know exactly what the situation is with the house. We have a developer who's very interested in restoring it. So it's a matter of what the family decides what to do with it. I mean, they want to sell it, you know, but it'll be, I'm sure, sold as is, which is not in good condition. So. It has a lot of fire, and I just noticed the other day looking through a window, there's original fretwork still there. So I don't think there's been things torn out, or it's just not changed in 50 years, you know. So that's good from a historic standpoint. However, it is not protected as a historic house. That is one drawback. So if somebody wanted to tear it down, they could.
That's why we want to get the developer who's interested in touch with the family.
Right.
So if anybody knows the family, has contact with the family, let us know. We get the developer in contact with it.
No, there's no one. The house is empty. Yeah.
Somebody stops by and thinks, it's not what it looks like. Would be the daughter, every time I try to go over, she.
Family member stops by, we think.
Oh, there's a woman stops by, and apparently there are cats or something she's feeding. Cats are gone? Oh, okay, you live across the street, okay. Daughter. Okay, well, that's good that somebody's checking the house.
From a preservation standpoint, is there anything that we could do as the neighborhood or interested parties?
What we could, the process to first of all identify it or mark it as historic, it would take months. You could do that, you know, if you want to take, you'd have to write an application, you know, which is pretty, I don't know if we could do that on ourselves or we'd have to hire someone. But it's a matter of, I think, getting the family and realizing that we do have an interested party in buying the house and connecting them with the family, because that may solve their problem right away if they're looking to get rid of the house quickly. So we put our feelers out. We've connected with some neighborhood people, and so we'll continue to do that. But to let the family know we have an interested party.
So,
Yes.
family, info@saveourseminary.org.
Yes, if you know it, just go right to our email. Yes.
I just wonder if there's any word on what's going to happen with the stables and the other buildings here.
Yeah, the 3 buildings, unfortunately, were owned by another developer who went bankrupt. So they are in bankruptcy right now, that process. So until that is settled, nothing will happen. But what will happen is whoever the lender is will eventually auction it off and have a public auction probably to sell the property to someone to finish off the buildings. They're partially done. Meanwhile, the association, the seminary, the National Park Seminary, a master association has put a temporary fence around it, filled some holes just for security issues, because you can walk into a couple of the buildings, unfortunately. Yes?
And those buildings are protected.
Those, yes, everything you on this side of Linden is in the National Register Historic District.
So the developer couldn't come in and just.
No, they could not tear them down, and they won't, because we'll stop them. Oh, there was another time the Army wanted to come in and take down these chandeliers, and I heard somebody told me about it, and I ran over here and I contacted them. And I said, "There's no way," and I called the Maryland Historical Trust, and they stopped the Army because this is protected, and they can't take historic elements out of the property, even if they did own it at the time. So, anyway, yes.
Yeah, sort of a comment, but also a question, is that this was the first site in Montgomery County designated as a historic site, as I recall. But it was 1974?
It was early, yeah, 1972 it became a National Register Historic District. I don't know that it was the first. It is a single site for a historic district. I don't know if it's the first one in the state, though.
The list didn't start until '69, so it was very.
It could. I'd have to check the county or the state log and see what the dates would be. Yeah, but it was very early. It was very easy. In fact, in 1972, it was the state who designated this as a national register. They realized the significance of this site. And that really helped protect it, even though just labeling it, historic doesn't mean it protects it, but it means when it was federally owned, they had to go through another layer of review before they could do anything. So, any more questions? Yes.
I'm just curious, with the award offered for the theater's arson, was anyone ever found responsible?
No, we never found, no one responded to the arson reward at all. We think it might have been a homeless person or a young person who had built a fire in the back of the theater, and then by the time somebody saw, the flames were coming out the front. So, unfortunately. Yes?
One of my favorite SOS programs, I don't remember what year it was, but you had gathered some alumni. Remember?
Yes, oh indeed.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, that was a real joy. We did a tea party for alumni. We had them, one of our programs, we had 4 or 5 of them talking about their memories of the school, and that is one of our programs that's on our website, which is really a delight to listen to, the stories they can tell. So, pardon? 2010? Might have been 2010, but it's listed as something about the alumni. You'll see it on our website.
Yeah, it was like the last reunion.
Yeah, it was their last reunion, yeah. Because they would have annual reunions, and we did one for them here at I don't remember what year we did it for them, but that was really wonderful. We had them, they were staying in a hotel in Bethesda. They got off the bus when they got here, and these are women in their 70s at the time, probably. And they all got off the bus and they went running to their sorority houses. Oh wow, look at this, and some at that time it was, wasn't necessarily fixed up. They were saddened by that, but they were just glad it was still here. So it was sad and happy at the same time, but it was a joy. Yeah. Any more? You run out of tape yet, Steve? Okay. All right. Time to eat cake. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
That modern picture of a tour, I'm in the crowd.